The night I decided to disappear from my own life, a stranger knocked on my window and asked me for a lighter. I was sitting in my car on the edge of a bridge overlook, engine off, hands shaking, staring at a bottle of pills on the passenger seat that I had been building the courage to open for the last 40 minutes. The rain had just started, soft against the windshield, when a woman in a yellow raincoat tapped on the glass like she owned the world and had all the time in it. I rolled the window down 2 inches out of pure reflex, the kind of automatic politeness that survives even the worst nights of your life, and she smiled at me like we were old friends catching up instead of 2 strangers on a bridge at 11 at night. She said her lighter died and she couldn't light her cigarette in the wind, and could I help? I didn't smoke. I told her that. She laughed, said neither did she just liked holding one when she needed an excuse to talk to someone. Then she looked past me at the passenger seat, at the bottle, at the way my knuckles were white around the steering wheel, and her smile didn't disappear, but it changed into something else. Something that saw me completely. That was the night my life should have ended. Instead, it was the night it actually began. If you believe in kindness showing up exactly when we need it most, if you believe people can be given second chances even when they've stopped believing in themselves, hit like on this video right now, drop a comment telling me you're still here, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel, because this story is about to show you exactly what I mean. My name doesn't matter for this story, but hers does. Her name was Noor, and she was impossible from the very first conversation. She didn't ask if I was okay in that soft, careful way people ask when they're afraid of the answer. She asked what my plan had been, specifically, like she was gathering facts for a report. She asked how long I'd been sitting there. She asked if I'd eaten that day. When I didn't answer any of it, she opened my car door, sat down in the passenger seat next to the pills like they were a bag of groceries, and said we were going to get coffee, and I could throw myself off a bridge some other night if I still wanted to, but not on an empty stomach and not without trying her coffee first, because she made the best coffee in the city and it would be a shame if I died without tasting it. I want you to understand how absurd that sounds, and how much I needed exactly that absurdity. Every person before her had approached me with so much fragile care that it made me feel like glass, like one wrong word would shatter me completely, and somehow that fragility became its own kind of prison. Noor treated me like I was already whole enough to argue with, whole enough to be inconvenienced, whole enough to be told no. And something about being challenged instead of pitted cracked something open in me that gentleness never had. I didn't drink the coffee that night. I sat in her tiny apartment above a laundromat while she made it anyway, filling the silence with stories about her own life that she didn't have to tell me, about her brother who died at 22 from an overdose that everyone called an accident because the truth was too heavy to say out loud, about the years she spent afterward hating herself for not seeing it coming, about the version of herself that used to sit in cars on bridges too, except nobody knocked on her window. She told me all of this without asking for anything back, without turning it into a lesson, without making her pain a weapon to guilt me into living. She just handed me her scars like proof that survival was possible, and let me decide what to do with that proof. I went home that night. I didn't throw the pills away, not yet, but I didn't take them either, and for someone standing where I was standing, that was everything. The weeks that followed were not a fairy tale. I want to be honest with you about that, because too many of these stories skip the ugly middle and go straight to the healing, and that skips the part that actually matters. Noor did not fix me. She was not a magic solution wrapped in a yellow raincoat. There were nights I called her at 3 in the morning because the walls of my apartment felt like they were closing in, and she would show up in pajamas with a blanket and just sit on my floor with me, not saying anything useful, just being a body in the room so I wasn't alone with my thoughts. There were other nights I pushed her away completely, told her to stop wasting her time on someone who was going to disappoint her eventually anyway, told her I didn't deserve the effort she kept pouring into me like I was worth saving. She never argued with me about my worth. She just kept showing up anyway, which somehow said more than any argument could have. She made it impossible for me to stay in the version of myself that wanted to disappear. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Every time I built a wall, she found a door in it, not by breaking it down, but by being patient enough to wait until I opened one myself. She showed up to my apartment with soup when I hadn't eaten in 2 days. She sat outside my door for an hour once when I told her to leave and meant it, just so I would know someone was still there even if I couldn't let them in yet. She learned the specific shape of my bad days, the way my voice got flat and short right before I spiraled, and she started catching me one sentence before I fell instead of after. There was a Tuesday, about 2 months in, when I actually got angry at her for the first time. I remember it so clearly because it felt like the first real emotion I'd had in months that wasn't numbness or despair. I screamed at her that she didn't understand what it felt like to wake up every single day and have to convince yourself that living was worth the effort, that she was lucky, that her kindness was easy because she had never actually been where I was. She let me finish. She didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't defend herself. When I was done, she quietly said that she understood completely, because she used to be the person on the bridge, and the only difference between us was that someone had once knocked on her window too, a long time ago, and she had spent every day since trying to become that same knock for somebody else. I sat down on the floor of my kitchen and cried for the first time since everything had started, not out of sadness, but out of something that felt dangerously close to hope. That's when I understood what she'd been doing all along. She wasn't rescuing me because she pitied me. She was rescuing me because somebody had once rescued her, and this was how she repaid a debt that could never actually be repaid to the person who gave it, so she paid it forward instead, to strangers on bridges and broken people in kitchens, one impossible act of stubborn love at a time. Slowly, and I mean so slowly that I almost couldn't see it happening while it happened, things began to shift. I started eating without being reminded. I started sleeping through full nights instead of staring at ceilings until sunrise. I got a part-time job at a bookstore because Nor mentioned once that I used to talk about books with a light in my eyes that disappeared everywhere else, and she thought maybe that light could be coaxed back out if I gave it a reason to. I threw the pills away myself, finally, on a random Thursday afternoon, no ceremony, no big speech, just a decision that had been building quietly for weeks until it was ready to become real. I want to pause here and ask you something. If this story has touched even a small part of you, if you've ever been the person who needed someone to knock on your window, or if you've ever been the one doing the knocking for somebody else, please take a moment right now to like this video and leave a comment. I read every single one, and I promise you, your words matter more than you know, especially to someone out there scrolling through comments tonight looking for proof that people actually make it through nights like the one I almost didn't survive. Nor and I became something neither of us had a clean word for. Not just friends, because what passed between us went deeper than friendship usually reaches. Not romantic, at least not in the beginning, though something tender and complicated eventually grew in that direction over the following year, slow and careful, built on a foundation of having seen each other at our absolute worst and choosing to stay anyway. She used to joke that she caught my breath the night she knocked on that window, holding it hostage until I found a reason to want it back for myself. And she was right. She made it impossible to keep drowning quietly. And then, somehow, impossibly, she made every single hard day of learning to breathe again completely worth it. 2 years after that night on the bridge, I stood in that same tiny apartment above the laundromat, except now it was mine too, our books mixed together on the same shelves, and I watched Nor sleep on a Sunday morning with a kind of gratitude that still catches in my throat every time I think about it. I am not going to tell you my life became perfect after that, because it didn't, and stories that promise perfection are lying to you. I still have hard days. I still sometimes hear the echo of the person I used to be, whispering that I'm a burden, that I don't deserve any of this. But now I have a voice louder than that whisper, a voice that sounds exactly like a woman in a yellow raincoat asking a stranger for a lighter she didn't even need, just so she'd have an excuse to save a life. If you take one thing away from this story, let it be this: you never know which small act of stubborn, inconvenient kindness might be the exact thing that catches somebody's breath and gives them a reason to keep going. You don't have to have the right words. You don't have to fix anyone. Sometimes you just have to knock on the window and refuse to leave. Before I go, I want to ask you for something, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If this story moved you even a little, if it made you think of someone in your life who needs a knock on their window, or someone who once gave you one, please comment below and tell me about them. I want to read your stories. I want this comment section to become its own kind of window, one that somebody scrolling through in the middle of a hard night might stumble onto and realize they aren't as alone as they feel. And if you believe, like I now believe with everything in me, that second chances are real, that kindness can be stubborn enough to save a life, and that the impossible people in our lives are sometimes the ones who end up making everything worth it, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs it tonight, and subscribe to this channel, because there are so many more stories like this one still waiting to be told. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Wherever you are tonight, whatever bridge you might be sitting on, metaphorical or otherwise, I hope somebody knocks on your window soon. And if nobody has yet, let this be it.